It's a shame because I do believe Russell Wilson should be considered a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but when it comes to fantasy, I'm not buying in this season. Unfortunately for Wilson, he plays under a play caller who treats the modern NFL like it's the 1970s. Watching the Seahawks offense in 2018 taught us they want to be slow and beat you in the trenches with their physical backs Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. Other than the Baltimore Ravens, who relied on Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson, there was no team that ran the ball more than the Seattle Seahawks. But didn't Wilson have 35 passing touchdowns last season? Well, yes, he did, but Wilson is a prime candidate for regression heading into 2019. Wilson only threw the ball 427 times, which was his lowest mark since his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Wilson tied Matt Ryan for third in touchdowns last season, which is excellent, but here's the scary part. He was 20th in attempts. As a comparison, Matt Ryan had 181 more passing attempts than Wilson last season, yet they finished with the same amount of passing touchdowns. He also had more passing touchdowns than Ben Roethlisberger, who threw the ball 248 more times than Russell Wilson did. That tells me one thing. Russell Wilson got really lucky last season and was so efficient in scoring touchdowns, I could not possibly see him replicating that once again. The bad news for Wilson is that they shouldn't see much of a change in offensive philosophy in 2019. Under Brian Schottenheimer calling the plays, the Seahawks were one of the most efficient running teams and more importantly went 10-6 overall. Now that we know his passing touchdowns were outrageous, let's talk about his passing yards. Wilson averaged 215 passing yards per game, which was his lowest mark since 2013. Between the play calling, the questionable offensive line year after year, and who he has playing at receiver, it's not looking too promising for Russell Wilson's overall outlook. He'll be throwing to guys like Tyler Lockett, David Moore, DK Metcalf, Jerron Brown, Ed Dickson, and Nick Vannett. Not exactly the best group of receivers I've ever seen. Another concern for Wilson's upside is his limited rushing last season. Wilson once made a living as an elite QB with his legs. 2018 was the first time in his entire career Wilson did not have a rushing touchdown. He only attempted to run the ball 67 times as well, which was a career low. During his QB1 season in 2017, Wilson ran the ball 95 times for 586 yards and 3 touchdowns. I would not expect anything near that in 2019. With the same coaching staff and Brian Schottenheimer himself preaching to be more physical after the season was over, I'm led to believe we're going to see more of the same from the Seahawks in 2019. In terms of where you have to draft Wilson, his draft stock keeps on plummeting for a good reason. In about a month, Wilson's ADP went from 7.03 to 7.11, so maybe people are having the same mindset as well. As of now, Wilson is getting drafted above guys I could take later and be more comfortable with, like Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, Ben Roethlisberger, and even Kyler Murray. When it comes to the quarterback position, I like to select guys with upside, so why would I ever spend a 7th round pick on a guy who threw the ball only 427 times and is shying away from rushing the ball? Why would I sign up to take a guy who is throwing the ball 100 to 200 times less than guys being drafted below him? In fantasy, you have to take advantage of volume, and with Wilson, you are not getting that. Wilson's career average is 1 passing touchdown for every 17 throws. If that average was put into his numbers last season, you're looking at 25 touchdowns instead of 35. I still love Russell as a quarterback in general, but when it comes to fantasy points, I can't see myself buying in this season. If I had to guess, I'd say he finishes between the 12th and 16th best quarterback in fantasy this season, which isn't terrible, but in a standard 1 quarterback league, I don't see him outperforming some guys drafted below him. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you next time.